So I've written down all of the people I've had on my podcast and the messages and the lessons I've learned. Chris Hill told me that just by getting to the start line, you've already won. Luke Kensole told me that if life was good all the time, we wouldn't appreciate it half as much. Nathan Chilton told me that we need to embrace the unknowns and uncertainties. Jack Pitcher showed me that if you've got a greater cause than you waiting for you at the other side, then you'll do anything to make them proud. Sam Bruty reminded me that this too shall pass, and more importantly, that includes the good. Simon Hall told me that what inspires him the most is the version of himself he's yet to become, and told me to not have any regrets. I'm Ollie Hall-Green, and I'm the founder and host of Shapes of Resilience. In this podcast, we explore the raw, unfiltered stories of those who refused to give up, turning adversity into strength, setbacks into lessons, and pain into purpose. Through these inspiring stories, we can learn and find resilience in our own lives every single day, because true growth isn't found in comfort. This podcast discusses sensitive topics including trauma, suicide, loss, mental health, and illnesses. Some conversations may be distressing, so please take care whilst listening. Morning. And I've had to take a comfier seat this morning, so I'm on my sofa up in my garden room as opposed to being sat on the rigid chair because my legs are in absolute bits, and this podcast is going to be a debrief of my first ever marathon. Absolutely buzzing. Can't believe it. It's not quite sunk in yet that I actually completed a full 26.2 mile trail run on Saturday, just gone 3 days ago. And it's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, without a doubt. Physically, mentally, emotionally. It's amazing what you can actually achieve when you put your mind to something. And I had so many doubts. So I did a podcast last week where I covered my thoughts going into the run. So I'm not going to cover that again. But what I'll do is I'll start from the night before. So we've travelled up and I've managed to stay at a friend's aunt's house just around the corner, which was nice because I knew that when I woke up in the morning, I only had a short journey to the start line, which was so reassuring. So yeah, very grateful for that. Woke up really, really early, around 4 o'clock. Couldn't get back to sleep, just buzzing, just trying to get myself in the right frame of mind. But it was difficult because you're already experiencing new emotions. And at that point, I started to doubt myself whether I'd done enough, because I probably hadn't really. Definitely hadn't done any kind of miles on my legs. So that was one thing that was on my mind. The second thing was my stomach, because I was definitely experiencing a bit of anxiety, which meant that my stomach just wasn't quite settling down to what I was hoping. But that passed, and then I managed to get a decent amount of food in me a couple of hours before, got all my kit ready, but then I realised that I hadn't packed my running shorts. So the only shorts I had were these thick, heavy, fleecy shorts, but I just kind of didn't really care. I just thought, whack it on. Like, this is your kit. This is what it was meant to be. It was meant to be that tiny little fraction harder because you haven't got the right shorts. So what? And then I put my kit on, realised that the running vest I had didn't really feel that comfortable with all of the cereal bars and energy gels that I had and my 2 drinks. So last minute I changed from my running vest to my bag. And when I turned up at the start line and I was just about to get out of my car, I had a quick look over and there was a big crowd of people and I could see loads of bags. So I thought, yeah, that's going to be all right then, because it'll be no different. People clearly wear bags on this event, so I'll stick with the bag because it seems like it's going to bounce less. It had a little strap at the front, so I thought, yeah, I'll just roll with that. And then I got out, went over and met my 2 friends that had travelled down from Leeds, Hobbo, Andy Hobson, and Alice Kershaw, and Hobbo's girlfriend. And it was straight away, just the energy, I could feel it, and it was brilliant. Immediately just lifted me, and I thought, yeah, this is what it's all about. Like, this was all just brand new to me. Like, that whole runner vibe of doing the events, I get it now, because it is definitely a vibe when you turn up and everyone's just waiting to go. You can tell everyone's in that same place where you're thinking, I've done the training or not. You've done some kind of training, you've prepped for it, and now you're here, and let's get on with it. So I went over and stood waiting to get my bib number, and then again I stood on my own, and there was some music playing in the background, and as I got to the speaker it turned to Coldplay, Sky Full of Stars, and I'm stood there on my own, soaking it all in, just looking around thinking everyone's here, either running for a cause or running for themselves. And it hit me at that point. That's when I realised that I was there to do something for a good cause, great cause, Rock to Recovery. I've covered so much about them and the great work they do. But when you're doing it for a cause and you turn up and you soak in the atmosphere properly, then it gives you that real sense of pride and that greater strength that you think, yeah, this is pretty serious actually. About to put my body through something really, really tough, really demanding, but I'm doing it for others. So you signed up for it, you said you're going to do it, let's do it. And then it hit me, this wave of emotion, and it, just overwhelming again, but in a really nice way. And I felt quite strong, I felt fit, I felt good to go. So I got my bib, went over, and then we sectioned off into 2 groups, and they called the runners forward to go into the start line pen, leaving the walkers that were going to do the second phase kind of waiting. And what I didn't realise was that everyone with a bag was doing the walking. So then I'm surrounded by all these serious runners, all in running vests, all looking the part, all looking fit, strong, buzzing, good to go, like serious. And I'm thinking, what on earth have I signed up for here? Because it didn't have that vibe of like a London Marathon where there's lots of people in fancy dress and people there just for the occasion and all this kind of stuff. It dawned on me that this was more of an event for people that were quite comfortable and competent runners. So that hit me. Felt very nervous at that point and thought, I'm going to be at the back struggling on my own with my silly bag and my fleece shorts on. But that again passed. And then Alice had a bag as well. She had a big bag, which was good. And then I looked around and saw there were a couple people bags, so settled down. And then off we went. And I always knew that the start was going to be challenging, but surprisingly, I felt good. I was embracing the moment. But what hit me was the terrain. It was fields, it was paths, it was a trail run. And we were running at a pace that was faster than what I would normally run myself when I'm doing my training runs, but slower than what Hobbo and Alice would run at, I could tell. I was mindful that you don't want to be hanging around here. So I just went with it, and it became this game of single file paths through woodland, meaning that you almost felt the pressure to stay reasonably close to the person in front of you so that you're not holding up the people behind you. And it became this single file run for miles and miles and miles of terrain and slight inclines and declines. And I just focused on my breath, focused on the present moment, focused on just looking down that metre square thing. And I got into my stride. I didn't have any headphones on, which again, something that Luke Beastall told me that when he ran his ultras, he never puts music in because it means he can connect more with his body and his surroundings. So I went with that, and it worked. It definitely worked. And what happened was I managed to get to the halfway point, staying at that same pace, and I could hear my watch going off every kilometre saying 5-minute kilometre pace, 6-minute kilometre pace. And I'm thinking that's quicker than I would be doing this on my own without a doubt. But I felt good, and I knew we were making ground, which again I knew was going to help at the latter part because you're just getting it done. And I wanted it to be hard. I wanted it to be tough. But I didn't realise how tough that would make the second half. And I got to halfway, and I already had that sense of accomplishment. I thought, I've run 3 miles further than I've ever run before. But then I hit my first wall, and that was savage. Instantly, my legs and my hips, the front of my hips, just went to this darkness, and I lost the ability to smile, talk, anything really. I went to this dark place straight away thinking, I've still got about halfway left. My legs are starting to hurt. My hips are starting to hurt. It's starting to become difficult just to lift my legs up. However, I know the messages I had that I was going to hit my second wind. So I was just waiting for that to happen really. And then I hit my second wind. And I was taking as much fuel on board as I could, which wasn't easy, but I knew that I had to do it. So I was taking the gels, cereal bars, bananas, electrolytes, gels, and I was just following that pattern. And that seemed to be working. I noticed a little boost in energy every 10 minutes or so after I had my fuel, which was good. And I was surprised at how well my stomach was doing at holding on to the food. But I had all these little anxieties eating away at me around, is this gonna last? How's it going to be in another couple of miles? And I started to drift back a bit, and I could feel my pace was really starting to fall back. So I put a headphone in, and then Hobbo waited for me. So I gave him the second headphone, and I remembered the time when he came to Brixham to do the podcast with me, and we ran around Brixham, and we had a headphone each, and we listened to Dave, We're All Alone in This Together. And I know how much that album meant to him. So I played the album all the way through. But there was little bits of that album where the words were creeping up, and because I've listened to it so many times, I knew what was coming. And the first one was, "The truth is madder than fiction." And that hit me. And I thought, wow, what a line. Because the fiction was, I'm never going to be able to run this marathon. And then the truth was, I'm actually here doing it. So that made me chuckle. And then we started listening to In the Fire. And that song that's one of my favourites. And I know it's one of Hobbo's favourites as well. And we were running side by side through this woodland. And then these words came, and it was, "The journey is the film." And as it came out, I looked at him and I said it, "The journey is the film." And I didn't realise at that moment he had taken that in so much. But when he did the Instagram post on Sunday, that was the line that he started his post with, which was amazing. And he reflected how much that meant to him, the running, listening to that album side by side together. It was really special. And the funny thing is, with that album, with the artwork, it's like a pinky, purpley reflection of the water with a sunrise. Now, there's a drawing that I've got up in my garden room that I've put behind me just there. And that's a drawing that one of my daughters did at school. She brought it home. And it's almost like the size of an album artwork cover. And it's so similar to the artwork of that album. So that's taken a little perch next to me. If you look at one of my favourite songs as well towards the end, "Both Sides of a Smile," and you look at what that means, and you see a lot of posts at the moment about videos of men, say at like a football game, and there's one guy that's quiet, one guy that's very loud, smiling, and then the picture later on shows that seat empty, and it's the guy you didn't expect, the guy that's smiling. And it's never to read too much into a smile, never to look the way people present themselves, because everyone's got the same emotions, and just because someone's presenting as happy and life and soul of the party, actually there's more chance that that person might actually be suffering with something or struggling. So that song means a lot to me. And then there's one final song which, again, I've been listening to that song a lot, and it's "Three Rivers," and there's a line, a little interlude in the middle, where he talks about not even being in the right water. The water doesn't even serve him, so he had to switch rivers. And I can resonate to that song a lot. So that was crazy. And that album really just pulled me through those couple of hours. And then I hit my next wall. And at this point, Hobbo and Alice had pushed on a bit. And we were running through these open fields. And I could see the fields went on and on and on. And I just slowed down. I really slowed down. And then I became quite emotional. And I don't know what it was. I think I was climbing over this turnstile, and I just looked up and thought, I got to run again now. And then I just started crying, just out of nowhere. There was reflections about various things, looking back at certain parts of my life where I've struggled, certain things you regret, and you think, what's it all about? Why am I here in a field? What am I doing? Why am I running? Why am I in so much pain? And I felt sorry for myself, and I didn't think I was going to make it to the end. I really didn't. I thought, I'm going to have to throw the towel in here because my legs, they're not working. And every step felt like my knee was going to snap. Every single step. So I just looked at the floor, and then I listened to a voice note from my friend Jimmy. And Jimmy told me to focus on my breath and go into this meditative state of breath. So I did. 2 in, 2 out, nice and fast, deliberate breaths. Did that for about a mile, and it started to like ease off a tiny little bit. And then I bumped into Ian. I bumped into a guy who'd slowed down a bit, and we became side by side, and our pace was completely aligned. So we ran side by side and just started having a conversation. And I think we forgot we were in pain because we were chuckling, getting to know each other. I asked him why he was there, and he told me that he had suffered in COVID with very poor health and had a heart attack. And he realised that his health and his fitness was something that he wanted to focus on. And 3 years later, he was running this marathon with me for the first time. And that was amazing. Absolutely amazing guy. And the funny thing that Ian said to me, because we were talking about this scenario where all of our emotions, we're all holding this emergency meeting together to discuss how much pain we're in and how we're possibly going to get to the end, and should we stop or should we carry on? And then he said, whilst all these emotions are having this mother's meeting, your legs are just saying, mate, I'm just going to crack on. Let me know when you've reached the decision. And that made me laugh because I thought that's exactly what's happening right now. All of my emotions are back and forth between each other. Meanwhile, my legs just continue to take that one step forward. And that was something I really wanted to experience in this marathon, was the conversations I've had in my podcast and the things that I've learned. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I haven't put that into practice myself to learn it firsthand. So I wanted to experience what these other people are telling me about. And I wanted to see how far I could push my body, because clearly people can push their body far further than is actually reasonably possible. And I'm not comparing what I've done to some of the feats that these other guys have put their bodies through. Mitchell, for example, 7 months of getting to the top of Everest and stuff that other people do. Jack running across the width of Australia, like that is, like, I just can't understand how you could ever put your body through that amount of physical suffering. But for me, looking back at 12 months ago, and I went to play seven-a-side football with some friends, and during the warm-up I was out of breath. We were all out of breath, and we played a game of football against some lads half our age, and I think we lost the first game. It was only like half an hour games, like 15-0 or something. We were very, very unfit at that point, and I realised I needed to do something about this. So when I did the challenge in December last year, and I started training for it with Tom and Tom, and again we started running up this reasonably short hill in Brixham, and I couldn't do it. I literally had to stop. Managed to get through like a 10-minute run with these guys, but I was suffering. And I look back and thought, I haven't ran for years, probably like since I was 27, 28 when I used to box. So that's like 10 years really of no real proper cardiovascular fitness. So I knew in that moment that I wanted to address this and get my fitness back and give myself the best possible chance of having a fit and healthy, active life. Fast forward 12 months, and I managed to run for 95% of a 26.2 trail run marathon, which isn't too bad really in 12 months. So that for me that was my Everest. I haven't even run a half marathon. I ran 10 miles at the most. And that's probably a stretch. And it was very slow. So for me, I always knew getting through this marathon was going to be a huge achievement for me. And I wanted to do it so that I could prove to myself that I don't quit. And it's made me now know even more than ever that you shouldn't trust every thought you have. And you shouldn't trust the thought when you're tired, or you're grouchy, or you've had a bad night's sleep. Like, because those thoughts, they're not coming from truth. They're coming from your ego trying to tell you, no, you're tired today, don't do that. So what it's done more than anything is I know that in those times where I'm starting to go back within and doubt myself or feel any kind of emotions of self-pity, or like I want to quit, I now know that I'm not a quitter and that I won't quit, which is nice to know, because I wanted to see how far I could push myself and how strong that urge would be to quit, but me not to listen to that urge and to carry on regardless. So that's quite reassuring to know, really. And I guarantee that anyone listening to this would be the same. Like, I imagine anyone that feels like they're close to giving up on anything, including life, you can surprise yourself and you can bounce back from anything. You can bounce back from any amount of pain, especially physical, as long as you focus on what you can control. And for me, all I could focus on and control was my breath, presence, and my focus. And I knew that I was going to get through it. Throughout the whole thing, I had this quiet confidence. No matter how strong the urge was to stop, I still knew that the legs were continuing to move. And there was a point where I thought, hang on a minute. I was having this same thought an hour ago that I was going to stop. So if I didn't stop then, and the pain feels very similar right now, then I'm probably not going to stop. And then came the next wall. So we're running next to this train line, and because they had to shorten the course to 25 miles because of some issue with a field, they added on a loop, which meant that we had to run for 3/4 of a mile along this train line to a cone and then run back. And it was flat, it was tarmac. And when I'm running somewhere knowing that when I get there I've still got to run back and then I've got to carry on, it's quite mentally hard to accept. And I just lost all enthusiasm at that point. My energy felt really, really low. My headphones just weren't working. Nothing really was, it just felt like everything was falling apart. So I started the self-talk to myself and just carried on. And then we came to the hill, which strangely, I was looking forward to the hill because I thought I quite like the idea of fast walking up a steep hill compared to the pain I'm suffering right now on my knees. And that hill just went on and on and on. Huge. We got to the top and looked down and thought, I've got to go down now. And then that climb down was so painful on the knees. Every step just felt like my knees were going to fall apart. So I started talking out loud to myself, and I think Alice was stood near to me, and there was something that Jimmy said, and I went for it. I started almost giving myself a bit of a telling off, really, like, what are you doing? Get on with it, pick yourself up, stop feeling sorry for yourself, get on with it. And it worked. And then we got to the bottom of the hill, and I knew we had a few miles left. And I thought, right, here we go. And then my stomach stopped working. And I thought, I need to go to the toilet. I desperately need to go to the toilet. And Hobbo came up with a quote, which he said that it's something that's known in the marathon world is never trust a fart after mile 20. And I wasn't trusting it. And I didn't know what was going to happen there because it was making it harder to run for sure. But I also started to feel like, how am I going to resolve this? Around the corner, I saw the final checkpoint with 2 Portaloos. That was meant to be. And then we got to the 2 miles to go marker, and I was so happy. I almost at that point became so used to the pain that the pain didn't matter. I knew I was going to finish this marathon, and I knew I was going to complete the hardest challenge I've ever done. So I recorded a little video to myself and to everyone else saying, we've got 2 choices in life. We can either keep promises or make excuses. I know which one I'm choosing. See you at the finish line. Press stop, posted it, and then sent it in. Absolutely sent it in. And that last bit of the run was so liberating. I had a smile on my face for the whole time because I knew we were nearly there. And then as we came around the bend and I saw the finish line and I knew we were going to finish it together, just all these waves of emotion just hit me straight away. And then crossed the finish line, gave Alice and Hobbo the biggest hug ever. Just felt amazing, absolutely incredible. And I would encourage everyone to set yourself a challenge. And the reason I do it in the way I do, where I post a video expressing my intention, is because I know at that moment that I don't want to let people down. That's just the way I do it. Everyone's different, but I enjoy that feeling of knowing, right, it's on now. I've said I'm going to do it. I've paid for the event. Now it's a case of doing as much as you can to train for it. And I could have easily pulled out because I could have made an excuse that I hadn't done the miles. And a few people have said to me, I should have done more miles and then it would have been easier and you would have been able to catch people up and get a better time. And I think those people are missing the point because I wanted to do this to show that you can achieve anything. As long as you've got the right mindset and you're willing to accept pain because it's temporary, to achieve something greater than yourself for a bigger cause than you, then that was kind of it. That was my point, that no matter how much you want to quit, you don't. No matter how hard things get, you can always find a way through. The thing that got me through that marathon was the messages of support I received. And I received so many phone calls, text messages, voice notes, and it was amazing. The support was mind-blowing, and the donations and the messages along with the donations again just made all the difference because it makes you remember why you're doing what you're doing. So to reach the £1,000 mark for Rock to Recovery is so rewarding, and it's so well deserved because I've been on the receiving end of their services and it is life-changing. So for me to be able to give back to that charity through put myself through physical pain and the wider communities coming together and donating, and not just that, but raising the awareness. There'll be so many people now that are aware of that service, that might be in the military or the emergency services or their families, that know that this service is there. And whether that's through one-to-one coaching or getting involved in some of the fundraising or attending the events. They do coastal walks, they do community days, do all sorts of get-togethers. So if that's the starting point and you just want to go along and get involved and connect with people that understand what you're going through, then check them out. Rock to Recovery on Instagram, Facebook, go on their website. And I can't recommend it highly enough because the support I've had from them during, before and after has been amazing. It's been so, so helpful to know that the people I'm doing it for recognise and appreciate what you're doing, because everyone's busy and it'd be so easy for people to take these things for granted. So for me to know that I have made a difference, it really, really has just made it all worthwhile. I can't thank you all enough for the donations. My legs have been in absolute bits. It was quite funny when we went to get some food after the marathon. And I said to my mate, I wanted to go to Nando's at Cribbs Causeway, but he didn't realise that there's a Nando's outside. So he's gone to the main car park and then taken me up 3 sets of stairs to the Nando's inside, which took me so long. And I ordered the biggest feast of food I've ever ordered, but my stomach hadn't recovered from the gels, so I couldn't actually eat it all, which was disappointing. The reason I chose U2 Beautiful Day as the music over the little reel I put together is because whilst I was on holiday, I read Bono Surrender, and then I subsequently listened to the podcast with Bono as a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast. And I just think he's such a beautiful character, amazing story. And I love the way that he puts his life lessons into words through his songs. I love the power of music. I love the power of conversation, books, music. If you really listen to the words and read the words on the page, then that for me that's why these people pass on their wisdom, is to teach other people. So if I look at how much I've learned through the start of this podcast, it's changed my life, and I wanted to put it into practice. I wanted to learn it, and I feel like I have, and I didn't get it before. Like when people were saying things like, I'm looking forward to seeing the growth. I'm looking forward to seeing who you become after the marathon. I didn't actually accept or understand what they meant by that, but now I fully do, because I know that I've grown again as a person. I feel proud of myself, and I feel like it's all starting to make sense now. There's a certain underlying message that many of my guests have had that I feel like I've understood what they meant, but I haven't actually felt it. So now I do, to a certain extent, and I look at what I can do next. We can always go further, we can always push ourselves, but I'm going to rest for now. So thanks again for all his support. It's meant the absolute world to me. I wanted to just capture this podcast so that I can watch it back at a moment where I have doubts again, or I set myself another challenge. Like the whole reason I've done the little posts in the way I have on Instagram is so that when I feel a certain way myself, that I can watch back a certain lesson that I've captured, whether that's from something I've learned or a message from one of my guests on my podcast, that I can watch these things back and remember something that I might have forgotten. So I really wanted to take a minute actually just to express my gratitude to everyone that's come on my podcast and everyone that's messaged me, because I've learned so much, and I don't feel like I would have completed this marathon had I not connected with these people and learned so many lessons along the way. So I'm just going to break that down actually. So I've written down all of the people I've had on my podcast and the people that have really helped me on top of that as well, with the messages and the lessons I've learned and been inspired by those people. So Stella really helped me to understand that our adversity and the things we go through can actually do two things. You can use them to continue with the cycle, or you can use them to break the cycle. Mitchell showed me that you can actually achieve anything if you've got the right mindset. Jack Shepherd told me that tough times don't last, but tough people do. Chris Hill told me that just by getting to the start line, you've already won. Luke Kensole told me that if life was good all the time, we wouldn't appreciate it half as much. Nathan Chilton told me that we need to embrace the unknowns and uncertainties. Jack Pitcher showed me that if you've got a greater cause than you waiting for you at the other side, then you'll do anything to make them proud. Simon Lemon showed me that it's okay to be vulnerable when things aren't going your way, and it's actually better just to be honest about that. Luke Beastle really helped me to understand what true time freedom looks like, and also helped me to understand that appreciating nature when we're out running is more important than listening to headphones. Andy Hobson told me to just get out the door. Rob Brady told me that there's no more fine, that we need to ask again. My good friend Mr. Harry Mills convinced me that we can actually think our way in and out of disease, and that by pretending we're happy, we actually become happy. Alice Kershaw really helped me when I was training by telling me it's more important to focus on time on feet and embracing nature whilst we're outdoors. And thanks, Alice, for guiding me through on a day. Sam Bruty reminded me that this too shall pass, and more importantly, that includes the good. Ben Coomer really helped me to understand the importance of boundaries, and that it's okay to say no, and that true happiness is presence as a father. Simon Hall told me that what inspires him the most is the version of himself he's yet to become, and told me to not have any regrets. Adam Thompson really helped me to understand that capacity could actually be more important than balance, and that by filling our bucket as opposed to filling our cup means that we've got more energy there to use. Plus, he's the founder of Rizarg, which really helped me in my training and on the day. Fantastic supplements, all the nootropics, adaptogens, nutrients that you need in a liquid, really absorbable format, and I could feel it really helping me to focus on the day. Adam Clayton told me that actions are more important than words, and true leadership is in those small things like getting there early, staying late, and leading by example. Brad Howard told me to invest in myself, and on the day he sent me a voice note saying we don't quit, and I held that with me actually when I wanted to quit. Paula Ralph's story showed me the kindness of strangers, which is something I saw in massive volumes on the day. Chris Billam-Smith told me that consistency builds success. Jimmy Lorraine showed me that the ripple effect of being authentic means that good shit happens when you stay consistent to yourself. He also told me to speak out loud to myself when things aren't going well. So I did. I told myself to stop being such a little and get on with it. And I did. Ollie Ollerton told me that your lowest ebb is the portal to your greatest self. And he told me that we need to not do what we did yesterday. And that really sticks with me because I always want to do something new that puts me out of my comfort zone by not doing something I did yesterday. Adam Parker helped me to understand detox in a really practical way. And now I embrace lots of those practices and look at the balance of toxins. As long as I'm expelling more toxins through my body than I'm taking in, then I'm going to be all right. Andy Steele helped me to understand emotional freedom technique, EFT, which again settled me down in the morning. I did my tapping, telling myself that I'm going to get through this marathon. Rohan Mahan and Tom Dunn from Mission Planet told me that if you put yourself in a position where you've chose to suffer, then that is actually a privilege. Podcast that yet to be released, Johnny Lawrence told me to use the pain as the fuel, and that just to close your eyes and imagine that pain is actually something that's there to be used to get you through the run. His story's incredible, by the way. Great guy, really supportive. Jade Horton showed me that we can actually redefine the most traumatic moments of our lives. She also taught me to not take anything for granted. Dan Holder reminded me that, again, if we've put ourselves in a position where we've chosen to suffer through a marathon, then actually embrace that, because at certain points in his military career, through listening to his story, you actually realise that I've chosen to do that, whereas he was actually in a position where he's having to return in and out of a battle zone with stretchers to collect injured, wounded and dead soldiers, friends, and that is something I can't even comprehend. And finally, Maria Conceição hasn't been on the podcast yet, I hope, but her story is by far just so heartwarming and inspiring. And above all, her story shows me the power of keeping your promises. So thank you everyone on that list and everyone that's not on the list that's helped me in any way, because it's just been phenomenal. I can't thank you enough, because I held all of that with me in one big ball of energy, and I held it inside of my heart and just ran with it. And on top of that, when I was thinking of my existing friends and family that I've already got in my life, I just couldn't be more grateful for all of it. So thank you all for the bottom of my heart, and just get out there. Honestly, get out there and do something. You won't regret it.